Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I pray you're all well. Allah bless you all. Right, let's do it again. I've got a stack of questions here waiting. We'll see what we can get through, and feel free to type your questions. Inshallah, we'll get through them all. Okay. Al-Fatiha. Alhamdulillah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Allahumma la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. Innaka antal alimul hakim. Allahumma 'allimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima 'allamtana. وامنحنا يا ربنا علما وعملا قربا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم زدنا ولا تنقصنا وأكرمنا ولا تهنا وأعطنا ولا تحرمنا وآثرنا ولا تؤثر علينا وأرضنا وارض عنا يا كريم. So, Alhamdulillah. Right, let me find these questions. Okay, we've got a stack of questions here. Right, first question is, my question is regarding choosing a burial site as a Muslim living in a non-Muslim country. In my community, there's a section reserved for Muslims for graves in the local cemetery. Okay. But the law of the area, but under the law of the area, Muslims must bury their dead in coffins. Yeah, this is quite common. So a lot of places, what they do, they'll dig the grave, and they'll dig the grave, and they'll put blocks, breeze blocks around the outside of it. Then the coffin is laid in, and some places they take the lid of the coffin off, and sometimes they leave it on. Either's fine. And then they put slabs, wooden slabs or stone slabs over the top, so there's a cover. So that's the way they do. That's the way they do this. But recently, cemeteries started offering natural burials that are compatible with Islam. Deceased is buried directly in the earth, directly, but then you'd also have it covered. We don't just pour the soil straight onto the deceased. I mean, like in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they had something called the type of graves the Meccans did. It was called a shaq. So they would dig a grave, and then at the bottom there'd be another area. Right, that's where the body is laid, covered, and then the soil is filled up. And then the Medinans used to do something called a lahad, which they dig a grave, and then there'd be like a triangular area cut out or dug out further in. The body is placed there, and then the main part of the grave is filled. So that's what they did in the past. So the question is, so faced with these two choices, should a Muslim choose to be buried in the Muslim section of in a coffin, or among non-Muslims in a natural burial? No, amongst the Muslims, right? The fuqaha are very clear on this, that the Muslim should have a separate burial area, and the graves of believers generally will be places where Allah's mercy descends, especially if it's one of the meadows of paradise. It's going to be a blessed place, and so you want to keep it separate from places where people are most likely being punished, and Allah knows best. But so even though there's this they're buried with the coffin, it's fine. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Great. Okay. Right, let's look at the next question. Okay. So, what else do we have here? The question, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can you memorize the Quran on your menstrual cycle? Okay, in the Hanafi school, no. It's not allowed. it does make it difficult. There is a very strong position in the Maliki school, which does allow someone who's learning the Quran to recite and memorize, even touch the Mus'haf whilst she's on her menstrual cycle. This is a position my friend Shaykh Idris Watts, who was trained in the Maliki school, he compiled a number of textual evidences in the past from the books of the Maliki. So it's a sound position, and it can be followed, right? It can be followed on this. So yeah, if you are learning and if you want to review or revise or continue with the memorization, then yes, that would be possible. Okay, right. Okay, let's have another one. Any more questions? Let's look at this one. So we've got a question. I would like to talk about buying and selling. Let's say I ordered a candy for $10 and I wanted to sell that for $35. Is that halal? Okay, so that's quite a markup, right? 150%. Okay, so Allah. When it comes to trade, excuse me, when it comes to trade, you can't sell things at a ridiculously high price. You can sell things, and profit is the point of business. There's nothing wrong with that. وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى, right? Sale is permissible, so profits from sales are fine, but you can't increase the price of something to such a degree that you're harming your customers. You're harming people who could potentially want that thing. And whether there are alternatives or not, if there are alternatives, you're selling something and someone can buy the same product elsewhere at a much cheaper price, you're just harming yourself, because they're not going to buy from you. But if there are no alternatives and you could make a reasonable profit, let's say you bought it for $10 and you were to sell it for $15, right? Let's say that's a reasonable profit there. And then for you to start selling it for $25, you're basically extorting. You're causing harm to people, so that wouldn't be allowed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Ethical business practices are what bring barakah, and unethical things are not. It's not the way of a believer. Yeah. Okay. Let's have a look. Right. Okay. Let's say a question here. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I know for my wage to be halal, I have to keep myself available for my hours. Excuse me. Commonly at my work, people do something close to 9 to 5, such as 8 to 4, 10 to 6, which is acceptable. Is this permissible, as I am still surrendering my time for the same amount of hours to responding to our customers, and I'm available at that time as most? Yeah, that's fine. You see, if your employer is fine with it, then that's fine. If they expect you to be available within a certain slot, and if they're okay with you, instead of doing it 8-4, you do a 9-5 or a 10-6 or something. If they're okay with it, that's fine. There's no issue here. Okay. Right. Yeah, Sheikh, can I collect the inflation rate from the money lent? Excuse me. What do you mean by that? Like, if you lent someone some money and then the inflation rate is, let's say 3%, you lend them £100 and you collect £103 back. If that's what you mean, no, that is riba itself, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has cursed those who give it, those who take it, those who document the contract, those who act as witnesses on the contract. You don't have anything to do with it, right? فَأْذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. For those who deal with riba, it's a case of the Quran says, and be apprised, be forewarned or be warned of war from Allah and His Messenger. So people who deal with riba interest, who give it, who take it, it's like you're at war with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's only two things in the entire of the Sharia where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares war on people. One is interest, so you want to stay away from that. And two is being at war, showing enmity, being an enemy of the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those people who are close and special to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being an enemy towards them for the sake of their wilayah, for their closeness to Allah. Some people, let's say someone's hasud, someone's envious that this person has been given this, and then they go and do things to harm them. That is that's being at war with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're asking for trouble, right? So taking the inflation amount, that would be riba. So stay away from it. Do yourself a favor. A few pounds or a few, whatever the currency is, it's not worth all the trouble that brings into your life. Allah protect us. Yeah. Any more questions? Let's go back here. Okay. Bismillah. Okay, so Allah. So there's a question about reminding someone of the favors you've done them. Is this permissible or is it haram? I believe it would be haram or makruh tahriman. Sinful. The difference is just a technical difference, but it's sinful. لا تبطلوا صدقاتكم بالمن والأذى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't invalidate your charities, your acts of charity, with reminding people of the favors you've done, and other verbal offense, harm. This is what people do. They'll give charity to someone, and then they'll say, "Oh, I gave you this much money," and what it does is it's a form of trying to elevate yourself over the other person. I have done you a favor, and it makes the recipient feel low and feel humiliated. There's a famous set of statements from Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib. أحسن إلى من شئت تكن أميره واحتج إلى من شئت تكن أسيره. Right? So he said, be excellent to whoever you want, you'll be his commander. Meaning, you've done someone a favor, and most people who are, recognize the favors others have done to them and are grateful for it, they will feel indebted to you. So it's as though this person is over them, like a commander is over a soldier in an army. And then he says, and be in need of whoever you want. Right? Meaning, whoever you need things from, you take things from, takun asirahu. You're going to be his prisoner. Right? And there's no harm in doing good for people, and there's no harm in receiving good from people. Ideally the believer, when things can be this way, qalilul mu'na wa kathirul ma'una, is someone who is a minimal burden and a maximal help. So he helps people as much as he can, and he burdens people as little as he can. But when it's there, you accept it. So saying to someone, I did this for you, I did that for you. I believe Imam al-Birgivi would say that it's a sin in his book, At-Tariqat al-Muhammadiyya. So it's best avoided, and you don't want to commit a sin by doing so. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is best. In what context is it permitted? It's only permitted, not even permitted. The only person who can do this is someone who's using it to maybe make someone realize what's in their interest, right? So for someone, let's say someone has been helping another person, and this other person who received the good has got some bad company, and they're taking advantage of him, or they're trying to harm this person. So the first person who helped this person out said, look, have I done this for you? And look, I helped you out in these situations. I've done this. Look, I care about you. I don't want you to be harmed. Don't listen to these people. Don't spend time with these people. Something like that. If there's a benefit for that other person involved, and it's not meant to humiliate or belittle them, yeah, then Allahu A'lam, it would be permissible. Okay. Allah. Okay, let's have a question from here. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If the contents of a will stipulate something to be given in trust to a group, and the verbal instruction was to use it in the way of Allah, I understand this to mean is waqf. There appears to be difference of opinion. The written will does not specify. Whatever is, generally I believe in the Sharia, whatever is later would be given precedence. That's I would have to check this. So apologies, I need to it's something I need to check. Technically, if something's been written, it's like kind of notarized as well. In the past, this may not have been done in the same way. They would have called witnesses. So people can't change their will regarding that. So a later verbal statement with witnesses would be what would be taken. But as for now, when it's done through a lawyer, maybe the written will might be given precedence. I'm not sure. Okay. Right. Let's see what else have we got. Allah. If you're a first-time mother and your baby is premature, if you're having issues with providing breast milk, can you use donated breast milk from the hospital, or is it preferred to use formula? Okay. So there's an issue with donated breast milk, right? Which is, you don't know who's given it. Generally, as far as I know, I could be wrong on this. Breast milk brings with it legal ramifications, and so like if a lady was to feed a child that's not her own from her breast milk, that child is technically like a son or a daughter to her, and it's as though that child has been brought into her family, so he's going to be like a son to her husband, he's going to be like a brother, or if it's a girl, she'll be like a sister to her children. And this is generally best avoided. In some situations, in the past, like in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was an incident of someone. I think they were going to get married, or they were married. They just got married, and it turned out that they'd been breastfed by some lady in the past. So the fuqaha generally are not too keen on this. If you can find someone else who can donate her breast milk, that would be permissible. Someone who you know, right? And you'd be happy for your child to be classed as, say, a child of this lady, because sometimes siblings don't want to do it either, right? So I've seen cases where an auntie does not want to breastfeed her nephew or niece, in case that nephew or niece may want to marry her children in the future. So in this situation, if you can't find someone, then it's probably better to go with the formula. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, right? Yeah. Okay, what else have we got? Okay. If a person calls himself great or the great, is he sinful for being, or as he's being condescending? So if someone calls himself, the great, someone says, I am the great maths teacher or whatever, I don't think it would be sinful. Sometimes people do it as a form of tongue-in-cheek humor, right? Sometimes in sometimes I'll joke in a class, and like yesterday I was in a class and I was joking. I said, I had a karama. That a karama is like a miracle that Allah gives to the awliya, and clearly it was a joke, right? And I was telling them I used to study with a certain scholar, and there were times where it was really difficult for me to go to class that day, and I used to say, oh Allah, please cancel the class. And then on a number of occasions I got a call, and the scholar would say, Abdul-Rahim, ما في درس اليوم. There's no lesson today. So I'd be like, oh, yeah. Alhamdulillah. So anything that is tongue-in-cheek, it'll be excused, as long as it's not a lie, right? But yeah, I don't think say someone calling himself the great, I don't think it'd be sinful, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Okay, what do we have here? Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Why does the Quran mention men more times than women? If you're talking about when there's a address to the believers, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, it applies to both. And then some of the addresses, so it's not amanu wa amanna, because amanu it applies to both genders, right? In the Arabic language, some languages are gender neutral in certain aspects, and I could say, oh people, right, or believers, and that's gender neutral in English. But in Arabic it isn't. So there's a default gender that's used in speech, and which is a masculine gender, but it's not. There's none of these 20th century and 21st century issues about masculinity, femininity, and feminism. None of that is in there. It's just a default gender, and that's used, right? So therefore, that's why people bring up this issue about God. Does he have a gender? No, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have a gender. So why do you use the masculine? Because that's the default in the Arabic language, right? And that's the way the language is. So, and then there were other verses that did come. I think was it Salama, one of the ladies of the Ansar, asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how come Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just mentions the men, and then the verses start coming. Innal muslimina wal muslimati wal mu'minina wal mu'minat, the believing men and the believing women, and the submitting men, the Muslim men and the Muslim women. So there's that address. But as for are men just in general mentioned more times than women in another form, I'm not aware of this in the Quran, and Allah knows best. Perhaps He could provide some clarification. I understand. Okay. Should you trust what the news conveys? Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu, or another qira'ah, fatathabbatu an tusibu qawman bijahalatin. So should you trust the news? Not really. And there's ample evidence of this. And there's a verse of the Quran. One of the Sahaba, I think he was a new Muslim, and he had in the past had bad interactions with a tribe called Banu Mustaliq. Banu Mustaliq had just accepted Islam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent where is it? Yeah, I have his name here. I was just looking at it yesterday. Umayyah ibn Umayyah, Uqba ibn Umayyah. Let me just find this man's name so the information isn't incomplete. Oh Allah. Yeah. Al-Walid ibn Uqba, that's the one. Al-Walid ibn Uqba, he was the half brother of Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan. They had the same mother. And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent him to Bani Mustaliq, and they were expecting the representative of the Prophet to come to come. And when he got there, they all came out to greet him, but he thought they've all come to attack me. So he turned around and went back. And he said to, the people in Medina, they've left Islam and they've refused to pay the zakat. And then, it was almost at a point that, fine, okay, we need to go, defend ourselves, or we need to go attack them, fight them. People were saying. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that if a fasiq, someone who's not religiously upright, comes to you with significant news that will have a consequence, then check, then clarify the matter, or fatathabbatu, and make sure that the matter's being aimed correctly, like it's right, lest you end up harming someone whilst not knowing, right? So that's the general rule with news, with the media. You need to know where your evidence is coming from. And we've seen, just look back in the last 3 or 4 months, how many times has the narrative changed? The 40 beheaded babies, and then there's no sign of a single beheaded baby. There's no name of, and then they're saying, oh, all these people got raped, and there's not a single person that's actually saying, yeah, it was me. And one was, someone was outraged that she didn't get harmed in this way. And it's just so many lies, and the media have never been the friends of the masses. The media has always been the tool of those in power, and whether it's a government or whether it's an international lobby or whatever, don't believe it. You can take certain things, but there's the facts as they put them. There's something that's empirical that can't be denied, and then there's the way it's framed, and then there's the larger narrative. And a believer has to understand that not everything that they say is going to be true, or kalimatu haqqin urida biha batil. As Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib said, some of the Khawarij, these people, this extreme sect in the time of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, there's a whole history to this issue. But anyway, they said, La hukma inil hukmu illa lillah. The judgment and decision and rule is only Allah's. So Sayyidina Ali said that this is a true statement, but what is intended with it is false. Right? So people twisting a narrative, and they may use things that seem to be true or even facts, but then it's used to prop up a particular narrative. So and there's enough evidence out there nowadays that for believers or for people in general to be aware of this. Go read 1984, George Orwell's 1984. And that's a good example of it's amazing when he wrote it, and how much insight he had. But yeah, should you trust what the news conveys? Most of the time, no. You can look at the empirical facts and come to a conclusion, or find someone whose conclusions are more accurate. Allah. Okay. Question: for the khula' payment, does payment have to be immediate, or can it be held in debt? Okay, so what's the khula'? A khula' is when a wife requests a divorce in exchange for a payment. So she says to her husband, he doesn't want to divorce her, but she doesn't want to stay. So she'll say, I'll give my mahar back to you, or I'll give this much. And the fuqaha, there's various rules. Firstly, if he's been wronging her, then it's sinful for him to take that money. But if he does take it, then it is his, but it'd be sinful. And it's sinful for him to take anything beyond more than the mahar. That's also something the fuqaha have said. Does she have to give it immediately, or can it be a debt? It would generally be something that's immediate, because with one of the things about the khula' is you're cancelling out all the debts as well. Because the whole point of a khula' is for her to get away from him, right? And if he owes her any money, then she can, then he can stipulate, well, fine, I don't owe you anything, and just cancelling it out. And that's one aspect of it. So I mean, if he's fine with her paying him the money in a month, in 3 months, fair enough. But generally he'll think, the guy may think, well, she's just going to get the divorce and run away. So I generally, if so, it's money that's owed, right, and it should be paid immediately, especially in those situations where there's been a lot of bad blood, there's been a lot of issues, so they want to end the marriage. So in situations like that, it's probably best that you end the situation as easily as possible, as quickly as possible. Just don't leave anything lingering, because if it's there lingering, then you're not free. You're not, you haven't got out of the situation fully. Yeah. So that's the way, and Allah Subhanahu wa Taala knows best. Okay. Right. Let's see. Oops. What have you got? What does Islam say about social media? Islam doesn't really say anything about social media per se. There are rules in the Sharia that would cover it, and they're the general rules of speech, looking, conveying news, these sorts of things. So you don't look at something you're not supposed to look at. Don't lie, and so the general rules of interaction with people would also apply on social media. So it's a tool, and if it's used with good intent and in a good way, it can be beneficial and rewarding. Otherwise, it can be something that's harmful. All right. What is just read that. Is the Day of Judgment going to be difficult for everyone? Good question. Very good question. لا يحزنهم الفزع الأكبر. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about certain people that the greatest fright won't cause them any grief. So no, it's not going to be difficult for everyone. For a believer, the passage of the Day of Judgment will be like that of a prayer, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. For the disbeliever, it's going to be the equivalent of 50,000 years. Allah protect us. A'udhu billah. So there are people, the people of the Quran, the people who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the righteous people, and it will be made very easy for them, and they'll be in the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that day. And then for other people, people who wronged others, who did dhulm, the disbelievers, it's going to be a scary day. And it's really like, this is something most people don't understand. If we really knew what the Day of Judgment was about and what was actually going to happen to people on the Day of Judgment, there wouldn't be a frivolous attitude towards deen, right? I was speaking to someone the other day, and and there's all this controversy about this scholar, and people who are his friends now, they're all saying, oh no, he's changed, he's allied himself with this group or that group, and all of this, and people on groups, social media groups, WhatsApp groups, just arguing, and I said, none of this is deen, right? And yes, you can look at a scholar and say, okay, right, this person is following the mainstream, his words are beneficial, that's fine. But this constant commentary and constant discussion and constant getting political discussions about this group or that group and all of these things, it doesn't do much for a person's personal relationship with Allah. Now, someone could think, this is religion, this is deen, right? It's about religion. But is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being mentioned? Is he being remembered or not? Right? That's the issue here. And so sometimes shaitan can deceive people and make them think they're doing something religious, when in actual fact it's as far from being religious as possible. Arguing about the religion, wala numari fi dinillah, as Imam al-Tahawi said in his famous Aqidah. So that's not being religious. So the Day of Judgment is a very serious matter, and if they busy themselves with learning about that and preparing for that, it'd be better for them. Does Firdaus exist now? Firdaus being one of the the highest level of paradise. Yes, it does. There's many ahadith about this. There's verses of the Quran that indicate this. So yeah, absolutely. And someone who's there's no need to even doubt any of this. All right, let me come back to some of those questions. Right. Someone asked, my father died recently. I read about a hadith which I'm posting below. I feel very comforted when I read this, since I want him to know I love him. But later on I read that this is a fabricated hadith. The Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's no household of whom one person dies and they give charity on his behalf after his death, but Jibreel will be present with him. But Jibreel will present it to him on a platter of light, and he will stand at the edge of the grave and say, O occupant of the deep grave, this is a gift given to you by your family, so accept it. From At-Tabarani. Allahu A'lam about the actual narration, but let me just tell you that the position of the ulama of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that yes, the deceased do benefit, right? And then we have another hadith from Sahih Muslim. إذا مات ابن آدم انقطع عمله إلا من ثلاث. That when the human being dies, his deeds, right, are severed, except from three things. You know the hadith about a righteous child that prays for him, or knowledge that has benefited others and continues to benefit and they get the reward, or continuous charity, a charity that has an ongoing recipient. But that's his deeds, and even though the righteous child that was praying for him is a separate entity, different person who has his own will, volition, his own actions, he's classed as a deed of the father. And where does he benefit from? From his dua. And so for the child to do his own good deeds, or her own good deeds, and to send that reward, gift that reward to them, it will reach them. That's the position of the ulama of Ahlul Sunnah from everywhere. Right? Imam al-Marghinani, who died 596, in his famous text Al-Hidayah, one of the main texts in the Hanafi school of law, he says that's it. That's the position of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that the deceased, you can't donate the reward of your deeds to anyone. I was studying with Sheikh Dr. Hamza al-Bakri, very prominent scholar from Jordan. Back then he was an expert in hadith, and now he's like an expert in everything. MashaAllah. He teaches in Turkey. He's quite well known. And he was telling us that his wife, so his father-in-law had passed away, and his wife said to him once that she saw a dream where her father was eating lots of food. So she said, what does it mean? And he asked her, have you gifted her have you gifted her have you done anything, given any charity on his behalf or something? And she said yes. And he said that, well, that's him getting the reward of it and benefiting from it. And other people have had similar experiences. So there are other hadith and there are other sources, so don't worry about it. Yes. Okay. Oops. Just bear with me, please. All right. Where are we? Who would be mahram for a person who was a wet nurse? Would it only be the siblings and father, or all the relations as for the other children? Would all siblings be mahram? Some only mention same child who's breastfed. Okay, the simple way of understanding the mahramiyya issue. So firstly, a woman produces milk generally, although I know now like a lady can use like a breast pump, and it will, even though she's not been pregnant, it will start producing breast milk. This is well documented. But generally a lady produces breast milk after she's become pregnant. So the husband or the man who causes that pregnancy, because it's possible for someone to impregnate a lady and then and then for him to divorce her, and then the child's born and she gets married to someone else. So the man who's responsible for the pregnancy and the lady will both be mahrams of that child. That's the first part. Secondly, the easiest way to understand it, let's say you got two families, Zayd and Asiya and Suleiman and Yasmin, right? Okay, so the first couple, Zayd and Asiya, have a child. They give that child to Yasmin to breastfeed. So it's as though you take the child from Zayd's house and you put him in Suleiman and Yasmin's house. So every member of that household becomes a mahram to that child, and he's a mahram to every member of that household. And then it would also be so just understand it like that. That's the easiest way to understand it. And so her sister, Yasmin's sister, would also be this child's aunt, for example. So it's as though he's become part of that household, so all the relationships like that go there. That's the easiest way to understand it. Alright, let me come back to some of these questions. Okay. I have locks and I cut off some of them because of a medical condition. Now my scalp is better and I wanted to know if it would be permissible to reattach the locks. I know the ruling on false hair. Just wanted to know what it would be for my own hair. It's the same ruling. It's the same ruling. The Prophet ﷺ, there's a hadith about al-wasila wal-mustawsila, those who extend hair, there's a curse on this action. And there are some contexts that the ulama talk about, but generally, no, this wouldn't be permissible. Just let it grow naturally, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitate its growth and give you ease. But yeah. Okay. Right. Where are we? Let's do another one from here. I'll come back to a chat. Oops. Okay. Right, a question on divorce. I was wondering whether me divorcing my wife would be considered sinful. She's from a different culture to me, and although everyone told me this wasn't a good idea, I still went ahead. I'm humiliated by her people who say my kids will never get citizenship from the mom's country, etc., and hateful comments. And okay, and it's affecting your mental health. We do not have children yet, and only been married a year. Okay, would it be better to cut my losses and find someone more suitable? In this situation, I mean, firstly, with all these things, an istikhara is a good way to go. You pray an istikhara and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But first you weigh the situation up. And I would say in this situation, if the issue is the negative comments from, her family and her relatives, then, just distance yourself, practically from them. You don't have to be in a situation where you're being harmed, especially to the point where it's affecting your mental health. So I would say, just off the top of my head, I would say, no, it's probably better for you not to divorce here. And, surely you must have been aware of the situation when you did consider the marriage. And I'm sure you did, consider the other outcomes and possibilities. So look at the cause of the harm and the distress. And here, it doesn't seem to be your wife. So if you divorce her, it's just going to put yourself through a lot of difficulty, but it's going to put her through a lot of pain and difficulty. And, if it's undeserved, right? So I would say, no, don't divorce her. Rather, if you're having, if your children don't get a citizenship, so what? So what? There are other countries in the world, right? And if you've got a citizenship in another country, that's fine. Take them there, right? And you'll be all right. And if someone's there humiliating you and saying these sorts of things, then what you can say to them is, look, I don't have to listen to this. I'm not here. I didn't marry her to listen to your abuse. And you say, look, I apologize, but as long as you're going to be abusive, I don't really want to be in your company. And just politely, go elsewhere. And you don't have to go there to their houses to meet with them, to mingle with them, regularly. So just do that. I think that's the best way around it. And don't divorce her. If things change, or if your mental health is getting much worse or whatever, or if the marriage is affecting you, then who's to say the next marriage won't do the same to you? So get some treatment. Go see a therapist, go see a doctor about your mental health. Maybe some medication or some therapy would help. If you're still having issues, then speak to a local scholar, explain the situation, and maybe you can come up with a solution. Or if it is best for everyone to end it, then but don't take the decision lightly. Okay. Allah bless you and give you ease and afiyah. Okay. Right. Okay, there's a few left. Right, let's see what's happening here. Are females allowed to use perfumes? Generally, there's a prohibition for ladies using perfumes. Especially, honestly, some of them, right? It's like those gases they used in World War II. It's just you can someone walking across on the other side of the road and you start choking. So we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. So generally, what's recommended for ladies is hygiene, right? Is washing regularly. If you need to use a deodorant or something like that, fine, not a problem. Use one that doesn't have a fragrance, right? Or if something that has a really, really light fragrance, that would also be permissible. If you're not working in close proximity to men or something like that, then something with a light fragrance would be okay. Perfume is allowed in the house. And if you're going to be in a place where there's just ladies, then fair enough. You could for going out in public, for job, for work, for study or something like that, then no, you shouldn't do it. Okay, Walaikum Salam. I live in the UK and I've heard that HMC is the best certifier. I agree with that. However, looking on the website, there are very few shops, butchers near me. Are there any other UK organizations I can trust? I don't know. There's the HF. Is it HFA? I think they're okay with stunned chicken. And the problem with stunned chicken is that sometimes the chicken can die before the knife gets to it. So that's the problem. There are a couple more, but the problem is that the standards are, I was in Gatwick Airport last year, and I was with a couple of people, and we went and we saw this restaurant said halal meat, halal food, and I don't really trust any of these places, right? Anyway. I'd rather just have a cheese sandwich or an egg and cress. Anyway, so we went there and he had a certification, halal. And so I checked it, and the place indeed, they don't use stunning or whatever. And so they gave that meat, and they certified the meat, and this place was using the meat in the airport. And but then what happened is they also used like ham and because they were grilling food, and they use haram meat, and they had halal meat, and the halal meat generally would have been halal, but it's all being cooked and prepared in the same place, so there's a transfer of impurity, so you can't even eat that meat. So the good thing about the HMC certification is, like, if a place isn't using if a place is using anything else that's haram, or that's a problem, then they won't certify it. So if there's no one around you, just there are a couple of places. There was some, was it Willow Farm or something like that? There are a few places in the country that do organic. For example, you don't have to get organic, but they do organic halal meat and chicken and these sorts of things. And what I know what some people do is they get, it might cost a bit more, but see as you're spending on your deen, on your relationship with Allah, right? And so they get meat and they get chicken or whatever, and some people just buy a small freezer, and they'll get some in bulk, and then they'll just freeze it. So that's one way around the issue, right? And just cook, cook that, inshallah ta'ala. Please make dua, I no longer get migraines. I would say go see a doctor, or maybe a therapist. Sometimes that helps. But may Allah remove your migraines and give you ease and afiyah in everything in your life. Okay, right. Let me answer a question here. Okay. So I seek your guidance in buying shares of automobile companies like Toyota, Honda, etc. I've come to know it's not permissible to buy these stocks, as they do financing for their cars. I also know that it's permissible to buy in installments. Yeah, the financing of a car in installments is permissible. So if they're offering a contract in the Hanafi school, how we see it is, they say, for example, buy this car for £20,000, or you can pay in installments with a PCP or a HP finance, and you can have it for 25. So the extra 5, they'll call it interest, but in our definition, it's not interest, right? It's just you're being offered one of two contracts, and you're choosing the longer one, where you pay more, but you can take longer. So that's fine. So in this situation, investing in these companies, if that's all that they're doing, then that's perfectly permissible. That would be permissible, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. If they have any other haram contracts, go speak to them, and if there's anything riba based, then avoid that, but generally, yeah, it'll be fine. Okay. Right. All right. One on. Okay. I want to sell things online. These things are not haram, and I'm not using haram stuff like, okay. For example, I'm selling electric stoves, but for ads, I'm not using the actual picture of the item I have. Instead, I'm using pictures from the internet because of better quality and display, just to attract customers. The product which I sell is different in dimensions or size, but the function is the same. No. This is not permissible. So you can use, for example, you can have a picture of a mug, right? And this mug can be identical to the mugs that you have. It doesn't have to be the same mug you're going to send to them. If it's going to be exactly the same, something minor, maybe like a little scratch or scuff or whatever, there's slight imperfections in practically everything, to the point that something wouldn't be classed as being damaged. That's okay. So you can share one image and then send another item, not the one that was taken, the image was taken of. But if you have to show the customers exactly what you're selling them, right? And this is part of the honesty, integrity a believer has. One of the Sahaba, he was selling flour, and he was in a sack, And then the Prophet put his hand, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he put his blessed hand into the sack, and the flour underneath was wet. So when he scoops it to weigh it, the wet flour is going to have more weight, so the person actually gets less flour than what he thinks he's paying for. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked him about this. He said, it rained and the water got in. So he said, you should have, he said, man ghashana falaysa minna. Whoever deceives us and dupes us isn't one of us. He's not acting like a believer. So no, take a picture of the actual item and sell it, or take a picture of that item from online somewhere and use that as a display. Otherwise, you can have a 200-pound grill, where you're grilling food, and you can get a 20-pound grill and say they do the same thing. Right? So you have to use the actual image, or an image of the actual item. And okay, can I just show hands of human, male or female? Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Right. What else have we got? We've got 5 left here. Assalamu alaikum. We're in the process of purchasing a house. We want to know what are some good practices to do when we're moving, especially for barakah. Allah. I've seen some people, what they do is when they move into a house, they will call the adhan in all the corners. And generally, a good thing to do is have a gathering where people come and make some dhikr together. Have someone recite some Quran, some naats or some qasaid in praise of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and just feed people and make a dua. What they do in the Middle East, in some places, people make a dua and they'll sing Hadi Dar Darullah Sakinha Ibadullah. This is a house, that's the house that belongs to God, and its residents are the servants of God. Amirha Ya Rabbi bidhikrillah, make it thrive, my Lord, with the remembrance of Allah. What puts barakah in a house is what's done in the house. So make your house like a one-off event is good, but make it one where there's dhikr in your house, where there's salah in your house, where you pray your sunnah prayers at home, for example, so your children can see. You make dhikr in the house, there's good interaction. إذا أراد الله بأهل بيت خيرا ألهمهم الرفق. I believe that's the wording. I could be wrong, but when Allah wants good for a household, He inspires them to be gentle, to be nice to each other. So make that something in your house. If you want barakah, that will bring barakah into your house. The remembrance of Allah and good character, right? And inshallah ta'ala, there'll be a lot of barakah that way. Yeah. Okay. Right. What's this? Is property flipping halal? So property flipping is a term where someone buys something and then immediately resells it at a higher price. This is very common with a friend of mine. He was looking for a GPU, a graphics card for his PC, and especially during COVID, it was quite common for people to buy. They use all these bots, these apps that can go onto a website, buy something immediately before an actual person can go and get it. They've purchased it, and then they'd sell it immediately for a higher price. So is property flipping halal? It depends. If the amount that you charge on the resale is a reasonable amount, right? Because otherwise you're just becoming a hindrance for the Muslims or even non-Muslims. Someone who prevents another legitimate buyer from purchasing something just to make a quick buck. So you can buy something, you see a good deal, you can buy it with the intention of, great, yeah, I'm going to sell this, and then sell it for, add some profit to it. You don't even have to touch the property. You just get the lease and then you sell it on, no problem, as long as the profit that you charge, whatever increase you make, isn't extortionate. Like, it's not considered an unfair increase, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. What else have we got? Is it permissible to buy and sell fossils of dinosaurs and other plants and animals that lived long ago? I'm planning on purchasing them. Yes, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's perfectly fine. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Okay, what have we got? Is it haram to vote for a female? No, it's not haram for a female to vote. Voting, I know a lot of people make an issue of this, or you can't vote and it's shirk, and it's not shirk. It's just a means of establishing a government, and the Sharia hasn't laid down hard and fast rules that you have to use this method. There's the method of shura, and in Islam, and how a ruler is chosen, but it's not haram to follow another method if it's what's going on in your country. A lot of the times, especially for local government, it's very, very useful and beneficial, and then we see what it's like on the national level. Sometimes sometimes it's just where it should be, voting for the best party. A lot of the times it's just voting out the worst case scenario and going for the lesser evil. So and that can make a big difference. So no, it's not halal. It's not haram. Voting is not haram, neither for a male nor for a female, and sometimes it can make a difference, a big difference. So yeah. Okay. And last question here. Right. My husband of 5 years and I divorced a few months ago. I've recently gotten back together. I just found out during our period of separation he had slept with other women. I feel really disgusted. I'm seriously questioning if I should be married to someone who does things like this. His excuse is that he was single at the time and he finds it hard to control his desire. He also says that he never cheated during our marriage. He doesn't pray, isn't very religiously inclined. Are these valid reasons in Islam to leave the marriage? We don't have children yet. Wow, Allah make it easy for you. It's a very difficult situation. I think maybe for a while it might be useful to hold fire on the children. Once you have children with someone, you can't get away from them for a long time until the children are adults. So here it's a tough situation. Maybe if you go to a Sharia council, or you can put a case to them, but technically, you divorced and he wasn't married to you. What he did then, firstly, it's not great to admit your sins, especially if he's saying, look, it was a genuine mistake. He might have made it more than once because he was struggling with his desires. Allah knows best. I can't speak. Allah knows what He tests His servants with, right? And but for yourself in this situation, I can't answer that question for you. You see, because sometimes I've seen cases where people, their trust is shattered, and they just can't open themselves up and be intimate with someone, having known that things like this have happened. So for such a person to say no, stay in the marriage or whatever, it's just putting them in a situation that's too difficult for them to handle. So in this situation, I'd say pray an istikhara. Someone recently asked me the same question. The husband was actually cheating, and she found out, and then she went to her mother's, and after some consideration, she prayed an istikhara, and I believe the indication that she got was And I think her heart was inclined was to go back, and that's her. And if she's okay with that, she can live with that. Great. With yourself, sometimes, the passage of time does help, and sometimes, it doesn't. So, you may find that you can't live with your husband simply because of what he's doing. So, just give it some time, pray in istikhara, and see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitates. And speak to your husband, and express what you're feeling. And a lot of communication helps a lot in resolving a problem. And just say to him, this is how I feel. Don't make it as, oh, you filthy animal, look at what you did. Rather than say, look, I feel like this based on what's happened, and then take the conversation from there. You never know, he may be, he may put your mind at ease, and or it may go the other way. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. See what Allah facilitates. I pray everything goes easy for you. Allah. Okay, right. Okay, let's look at these here. Alaikum salam. What's the ruling on life insurance? Yes, it's impermissible. Life insurance in general is impermissible. Okay. Ameen. Allah bless you. When and how do you do sajda of forgetfulness, and how do you do sajda after Quranic verses? Quranic verses, if both of these preface, you should study the topic. So take the course that we have, Ascent to Felicity, and study the topic. There's a lot of details and nuances, such as what's a majlis, when can you do it, when should you do it, these sorts of things. But generally, if you recite a Quranic verse, then you do a sajda. You can do you just stand up and face the qibla with wudu. You say Allahu Akbar, and you go into sujood, and then Subhana Rabbiyal A'la 3 times, and stand back up. Or you can do it from a sitting position, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la, Allahu Akbar, then the sujood, and then back up. Once for each verse. If you recited a verse in one place multiple times, you just do one. If you did it in multiple places or gatherings, or you recited it once, and then you got a phone call, then you talk to someone for 10 minutes, and you recite it again, you do 2. So there are some of the new details that you're going to have to study. The sajda of forgetfulness, this is why you have to study, because generally, if you miss a wajib action of the prayer, or you delay a wajib, or you do a wajib before its place, you got to do a sajda to sahu. So you need to know what a rukn of the prayer is, what fard of the prayer is, what a sunnah of the prayer is, and what a wajib of the prayer is, and what the adaba. And so study it, please, and that will help you a great deal. So like missing the Fatiha, the entire Fatiha is wajib, reciting at the beginning, i.e. so you don't say Qul Huwallahu Ahad, you do that, and then the Fatiha. There's an order. So you recite entire Fatiha at the beginning, you don't delay its recitation, these sorts of things. So they're all part of it. Does it take your fast to take a very hot and therefore steamy shower? Also, do smelling scented candles. Bakhur is going to break your fast, right? Scented candles, it's just like a perfume. No, that won't break your fast. A shower, so steam, if you sniff in steam, it will invalidate your fast if you do it deliberately. But then there's a rule that things you cannot avoid are excused. So, for example, smoke, breathing in smoke or sniffing in smoke is going to invalidate your fast. But if you're in a taxi, for example, and it's like a really, polluted city you're driving in, and you've got the window down and all the smoke's coming and you can't help it, then that's what it is. It doesn't invalidate your fast. So it's the same thing if you're cooking and there's steam, making pasta, for example, there's a lot of steam there, or the steam in a shower, or you're ironing and there's steam there. If you can't avoid it, just keep breathing normally and carry on. So no, it won't invalidate your fast. Hi, I need to be a Islamic. Where can I find church in Franktown, Botswana? So I think you want to be a Muslim, and let me just check. Where's this place? Oh, trip. It says Francistown. Is that the one? Maybe it's that. Apparently, it's one of the best places to visit. Are there any cities nearby? What you could do, it's in Zimbabwe. What you could do is, on Friday, you can book a session with a teacher, like a 10-minute slot for a Q&A. So if you want to do it earlier, find a teacher. If you go onto the website, as a student, you can book a 10-minute slot. So I have those office hours on Friday, so you can book it like that on Friday, or if you find another teacher earlier, do it with that, and then I can talk you through it. Okay, inshallah. But otherwise, you have to. I don't know where to find someone that can help you there. Apologies. Okay. Yeah, broken record, man. And like I said, just go with what Imam Lakhnawi said. You'll be all right. Istiqrar, just you don't have to be not moving, right? Don't worry. What are the limits of interacting with your sister-in-law? Yeah, some of the ulama say with non-mahrams, like if you're just walking and there's a group of non-mahram ladies, say assalamu alaikum ladies, you just carry on, right? And so don't do that. But a sister-in-law, it depends, dynamics are different. So obviously no touch and no lustful glances or anything like that. And generally, like with my sister-in-law, like if we're there, if I'm with my brother in his in his house or whatever, and if there's a conversation, if she's there, like I'll reply whatever, but I don't just sit there and chit chat with her. Right, I don't call her up and how you doing. I don't have text conversations, so things like that. So there's a polite interaction, and if there's a discussion, whatever, you can get involved, whatever. But just sitting there and casually chatting away and whatever, that's probably best avoided. Yeah, and let alone being alone with them. Can you buy a takeaway from a Shia takeaway? Have a takeaway near me who I think if the food is halal, then yes, that's fine. And all right, last one. Do you know when the Sheikh Faraz will resume the Ajurmiya lessons? I'm registered for the course, but the lessons seem to have paused. I have no idea, but shameless plug. I also taught the Ajurmiya. that course is still up. You can go do that, inshallah ta'ala. And okay, Allah bless you all. Let's stop here, and we'll continue next week. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Where can I find Imam Lakhnawi's fatwa? In his book of Fatawa, what's his name? Dr. Salah Abul Hajj. He did an edition of it. Just Google it. I think on archive you can find all of his books, and it's in there. Okay. I don't do the technical stuff. And can I ask one final question? You just did, and it's over now. I'll go on then quickly. I don't know about the appointments. You're gonna have to just contact them, ask for some help. There's only so much I have. Only so much I have to pour, and my liquid is mostly poured away. All right, it seems like you're taking ages. All right, anyway, let's stop here. Next week, inshallah. Okay. Barakallahu feekum. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad. I'll stick now. What are your thoughts on talfiq, combining madhahib? Why did some of the Hanafis allow this? And they allowed it on the basis that al-ammi la madhhab lahu, someone who has no training in a madhab, he has no madhab. Whatever the person he asks, whatever answer he gives applies to him. In today's world, talfiq is something that is best avoided, because what you've got, when they say a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing, and you have a lot of people that think, well, I can do this, and I can, even people who think they know Arabic, I can do this, I can do that, and then they end up getting themselves in a lot of bother. So, yeah, Allah bless you. All right. Our gaming questions halal for next week. Depends on the question, on the question, and depends on the game. All right. Allah bless you all. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil